Woo!
Hey everybody, Jim Salmons here, and welcome to the Kayak Fishing Show live, brought to you by all these wonderful sponsors. Scrolling across the bottom. We haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. Last week I was a little bit under the weather on Tuesday, and then Wednesday was my birthday, and so we did some fun stuff for the next few days. So anyway, for anybody who's new to this, every Tuesday and sometimes Thursdays, we air old episodes of our show. And then we have on guests and talk about the show and answer your questions, anything like that. Sometimes it's just me, as it is in this one. But we also open up the shows with my friend Patrick Sebile of A Band of Anglers, who talks about one of his lures. Before we get to Patrick, though, a couple of things arrived. You know, we're getting back to shooting. I'm really excited about that. We went to Louisiana and played in the wind. I'm going to be going to Florida in a few weeks and actually going fishing with Patrick. So some gear starting to come in for our shoot. So when that happens, of course, we've got to give some love to the sponsors and show you some of the stuff. And a couple of things arrived that I really wanted to show you. The new NRS, what are they called? Now I forgot. The Lolo Short. Super light material, stretchable. I'm actually wearing another pair right now. Really, really nice paddling short. My buddy Jameson has a pair of these. He says they dry super, super fast. So when you're on the kayaks and all that in some of the warmer areas, that's a big deal. Another item that came up was their new Champion jacket. It's not what you would call a hardcore paddler's jacket, but it's a great kayak fishing jacket. It's not made for the whitewater or any of that. Doesn't have the full gasketed seal around the neck. It is a full zipper, which is nice. And one thing, if you wear a paddling jacket, it's a little bit cold, you go reach in your bait tank, anything like that. There's nothing worse than having that water go down your sleeve and then down your back. So what this has, if I can find the sleeve, it actually has a really nice gasketed wrist. So that's going to seal up really well on the wrist. And it also has the Velcro, so you can snug that down. So really, really nice. It comes with a hood built in. I tried it on the other day, and it was just a really, really comfortable jacket. I really liked it. So that's the new NRS Champion jacket. So definitely wanted to show you that. Another thing that actually arrived right before I went to Louisiana, and then I left it there to send off with the Blue Sky Boat Works, and I wanted to show you guys, was the new Yak Attack cell block. Now, they've had the cell block for a while, but this is the new one, which is injection molded instead of the old cutting board material, starboard. So I didn't put this one together. You do it. It's 4 screws or something to throw it together. The nice thing is if you can see that at all, there's these areas here, so you can attach things really easily. Those are your drill spots to put on, say, your fish finder mount. And I'm going to attach my Raymarine Element to that, or the just got stuff laying on the floor, the transducer arm. Now, the other nice thing about the new cell block, which I'm really stoked about, it's a little bigger than the old one. I can now put 2 Nocqua 10 amp batteries in there. So a little bit more room, so I can carry those 2 batteries. And then the other cool thing that Nocqua has now is their Smart Link for the battery. So now I can actually put 2 batteries together. Now, what it does is when your primary battery goes dead, it switches to the other one. So they're not physically tied together. It's a switch, but at least you don't have to then, unplug and plug in another one. So, running bait tanks, which draw a lot, some of the really big fish finders, particularly if you're running them very bright, can really drain down a battery. So being able to run 2 10 amp batteries fitting in that cell block And then with the Smart Link, it's a really, really cool setup. I used that setup in Louisiana, and I basically ran my fish finder for several days. So just wanted to share those things with you. I said they kind of just arrived here, and those are our sponsors. So we want to show you their stuff and support them. There's a couple comments here already. Liam saying hello to Jim and Patrick, and thank you, Liam. I appreciate it. Alan, thank you for the birthday wish. I do appreciate that. Nicholas says he loves the new color on the jacket. Yeah, so do I. That's a great color. I'm not really big on really super bright colors, which a lot of times these things are, and more dull, more like me. And Mario's from Greece. Thanks for joining us, man. That's awesome. Love to see people around the world. I'd love to go to Greece sometime. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring up my friend Patrick Sebile. How are you, Patrick?
There's someone who come to say hello at the same time. Here you go.
Hello.
That's
Hello.
the next question. This is Luke. I just asked him not to come when I'm live, but they're swimming. But of course, I guess that's like magnet. Say don't do that, and you can be sure that's what will happen, right? Okay. You're good?
Bye, Luke.
Look, Jim, say hello. And say hello to everybody. Allez, go back to the swimming pool. Yeah, so I'm at my friend's house, and today I have the kids with me. We're planning to go to Home Depot because Jim is coming with his crew in just basically a couple of weeks from now, and we're finalizing some project that I have for a while. I just didn't have the time before, and those are floating decks, 2 of them having a fish feeder, 2 of them having a live well. So of course the fish feeder means there will be pellets basically to feed the bream and attract the bass and create a lot of action. And the 2 other one will have massive pans, live wells, saltwater live wells for Google Eyes that actually I'm going to put bream or shiners inside of them. So that also will attract fish. And one of the great things about that, because they're that big, is if sometimes I have a big fish and I'm by myself, and I have a big bass, I'll be able to leave the big bass in there, allowing the time to have a friend or someone to come to make good pictures,
Right.
Well, guess what? That's part of my job is using my lures. And when there's a big fish, I got a 14-pound bass back in June. I was by myself on my kayak, and I just take pictures, selfies with my iPhone. And it don't, when you have a really good fish, you really want to have someone who take the proper pictures. So that would be one of the things.
Yeah,
So
I'm not good with the selfies either. With fish, I hate taking those. So
yeah,
that's awesome. And you live right on the lake, so
Yeah.
God, my phone is just going crazy today. Gotta hide it.
So right after the show, we're gonna drive to Home Depot, orange shop, like my son say. So I have my twins. So that's my boy. I have my girl who's in the water, and so you were saying you were not coming here, but I guess So 52 years old, but 5 years old twins. So plenty of life around me.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So Patrick, today we were going to talk about your bucktails, the flying bucktail.
Yes.
It's based on the same principle as the lead heads you're using, your jig heads, which I think are just freaking awesome. So why don't you give our viewers a walkthrough on these things, and I'm going to give you the whole screen. And please, if you have any questions, please throw them out there so Patrick can answer them for you.
Yeah, definitely. Please, any question are very, very welcome. And maybe some of you were here on the last time, I think, or the time before, where I explained that bucktails were a big surprise of mine years ago. So very long story, but short. For many years, I was thinking that bucktail were not really good lures. They were more just a jig head and some airs on them, until a day where in Sebastian Inlet here in Florida, I ended up fishing on a rock and with all kind of lures, and the guy next to me, really kick my BUTT using bucktails, and that was really the eye opener to me. And from then, I started to use them and understand the big benefit they have in certain conditions. And that's why I end up to think, well, most of the bucktail definitely have that subtle action of the airs, and that's part of why they do catch fish. because the fish, again, most of the fish are very sensitive thanks to their lateral line to very little vibration. I mean, just a shiner swimming through water is plenty enough information for a bass to figure out there's a prey around. So the hairs have that kind of benefit, and that's why bucktail are very good. But typically, bucktails are just a piece of lead and a hook, and that's where I was like, well, I really think I can work on my own bucktails and bring something that really bring me and other anglers more benefit than simple piece of lead with a hook. So I ended up to come with two models. So why two models? Because basically I consider there's two main type of things. There's the situation where you want to fish on the bottom or have vertical fishing. And in that case, that's really where I like to have a bucktail that have a very well-centered attachment point. And there's no secret if, for example, Spro, they have one of the very best bucktail on the market, definitely. And one key feature of the Spro bucktail is that it's perfectly balanced. So when you work that bait along the bottom, the position of the line attachment is very well made. So then indeed, it stays very, very horizontal when you work that thing. So what I say, so that's the live thing. You don't do that. So that's why I think a bucktail that's balanced is really important when you fish on the bottom and you have a bottom bouncing action, or also when you have a vertical jigging. And definitely bucktail are very good for vertical jigging. So that's why I came with one that was dedicated to this kind of action. And I will go into detail about the wings and what's specific to this guy. And then the second case are when you more likely cast and retrieve, not really trying to be in contact with the bottom. I'm not saying there's an obligation of not being in contact with the bottom, but I'm saying there's a number of cases where you want to have bucktails that you can make a long cast and you retrieve them. And that's really the retrieve, in mid-water and sometimes on top water or deeper water. That's the retrieve itself that makes sense to this kind of bucktail. So that's why those bucktail are more attached to the nose, because then you don't need to have that kind of balance like here. So that's why I came with these two models, basically complementing very much each other. So starting with the bottom bouncing one, so that's the name. It's with Oceanborn, the bottom bouncing bucktail. So what are the key elements that makes that bucktail very much different? Well, the very, very big thing are the wings. So you can see the wings here on the sides. And you see the wings on this model are pretty much horizontal from the tail here to this level. And then you have a little bit of an angle right here. So it's very important because thanks to that, in fact, that helps those guys to glide in the water. So that means when you have a vertical jigging, for example, this guy is a 3 or 4 ounce, the one I have in my fingers right now. Well, that 3 or 4 ounce, when you jig it in, say, 40 feet of water, and you make that very sharp jigging and let the lure go with a semi-sack line, it can glide as much as 8 feet away from you. So there's a chasing action that's really great, and that's really a big deal. That's really why the wings makes a big deal. Another reason why it's very important is that, I mean, I'm going to try to show you with my fingers, but a regular bucktail, when it lands on the bottom, basically it rolls sideways and the hook may snag on the floor. Well, here, thanks to the wings, you can see, I hope you can see well enough. I'm trying to center the lure to the camera.
Yeah, I can see it.
You see, it goes like this. So that means if you make pause on the bottom, the hook will stay up. So you're much less likely to snag, the bottom than with regular bucktail. So plenty of action thanks to those wings, really plenty of action. So when you retrieve and have, for example, a twitching and jigging motion or a purely vertical jigging motion, those wings give a glide to that. And also when they land, they stay beautifully here. Also, you can notice there are ribs underneath the belly. The ribs not only allow for a better water flow, but also when you work the bait on the bottom, it helps also to make some turbulence, with the sand or the mud, whatever is on the bottom. So it attracts better the attention to the fish who are bottom feeders, like fluke, for example, redfish, and a number of others. So a last thing that I really like to highlight is basically my hook. So some of you have seen already the hook that I use on several lures. That's actually the hook I designed a long time ago. I was 16, basically, at school. This hook really hook the fish better, but more importantly, keep the fish better than regular J hooks. So the explanation is very simple. On a regular J hook of the same gap, the same opening as here, well, the loop goes back here. So that means the fish lip, say it's my finger. When you pull on the fish lip is here. So when the hook is not very well hooked, when the lip is a little bit cut and the fish shake the head like a snook or tarpon, stuff like that, well, the distance from the lip to the point to go that give freedom to the fish is just that. In the case of my hook, basically the distance is twice. So it's much, much longer. You can see right here, that's where the lip of the fish and the pull point is. And that's very important because when the fish shake the head, it's less likely that the fish can spit the lure and you to lose the fish, basically. But also the pull point is here, very close to the hook shank. So it's also for the wire less likely to open the hook if you have a big fish.
I see. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, and I use that hook also, for example, for bass. Of course, I have thinner wire hooks for the bass, and that's really very effective. It really lands more fish for the same number of bites. That hook lands you more of those fish that can go away, like the bass, the snook, tarpon, and stuff like that. So that guy, the bouncing bucktail from Oceanborn, and now the swimming bucktail. So the swimming bucktail, as you can see, is much more compact, and the attachment basically is closer to the nose. So the wing, the wing on the side also are wider in comparison. So when you retrieve, you have more lift on the water. Oh, you don't see him? Yeah, you cannot see him because I'm on the camera right now, buddy. That's why you cannot see James.
There I am. You can see me now.
Hello. Okay, I need to finish that, all right? So the beauty of live things, right?
Oh yes, that's okay.
So as much as the most of the wing on the bouncing is pretty much horizontal and just the very front have a bit of an angle, well, these guys have a very steep and steady, angle. So it really matters why, because when typically you use a regular bucktail, again, a regular bucktail is pretty much a piece of lead and a hook, okay, catch fish, of course, but they are very limited in the way they are made and the way they act. So the angle here, in fact, really gives lift on the water. So that means when you retrieve this guy, you have more lift than a regular bucktail. So why does it matter? Very simple. Say you're in Jade, please. He promised me. I asked them like 3 times before the show. I say, when I'm going to be on the show, you're not going to scream. You're not going to shout loud. Don't come next to me, whatever. And say, yes, daddy. Yes, daddy. Well.
Well, they're in a swimming pool. What do you expect?
Yeah, I guess I was foolish. I mean, I've looked them. So here's my daughter. Okay, you say hello? This is Jay.
Hello.
So the lift is the big thing. Because say you're in a situation where, when you know about fishing with bucktails, in a given situation, you typically need to fish at the right depth and the right speed. So say on a given place, and you have, for example, 30-pound braid, on the right play, on a given place, maybe you need 1 ounce bucktail to be able to have the bucktail swimming at that depth and that speed. And if you put a heavier bucktail, then you need to reel faster to have the depth you want. And then if you go faster, in some cases, in fact, it doesn't work. And we have the case, snook, tarpon, cobia, there's a number of fish with whom that happens. So striped bass also, when they are not really active, not really feeding, you must have the right speed, and sometimes it's quite slow. So the lift on the wing is a big deal because now, thanks to that angle, which is pretty much marked, again, you can see that's a big difference with the other model. With this, you're able to use 1 or even 2 sizes above. That means in a given place where you need a 1 ounce bucktail, here you may use a 1.5. You may use 1.5 ounce or even a 2 ounce and still be able to reel at the same speed and have the lure going at the same depth. All of that thanks to the wings. So that's why it's a big deal, because of course, if it comes to cast, well, you better cast with 1.5 ounce or even 2 ounce instead of a 1 ounce. Definitely makes a much better, much longer cast. You have more control. If it's windy, also if you have strong turbulence or wind. So many reasons why. Now, another big benefit of those wings, let me show you here. Another benefit of those wings is that's a beautiful darting lure, and truly darting. That means when you use the swimming bucktail, when you retrieve with a darting motion, that lure truly will dart. Like, for example, that's a 2 ounce. The 2 ounce can easily dart like 10-inch sideways. A beautiful darting motion, very important. If you let this thing fall on the bottom, again, like the bouncing one, you see the wing, keep the bait in the right position so that the hook will not totally roll over, much less risk of snagging on the bottom thanks to that. So that's another big deal. Definitely another big deal. No, yeah, you have to wait a few minutes. Yeah, I understand. The truck felt, of course, in the depth of the swimming pool, but you have to wait a few minutes. Yes, no big deal. That's okay. Understand. Yes, yes. My son, by the way, his best bass is 23 inches. So, hey, you know, I'm proud of that.
Heck yeah.
I'm proud of that. Hey, give me that. No. Give me that bucktail. No. Okay, the bucktail is going its way to the swimming pool. So,
well, beware the hook.
Yes. That's what it was. So basically, that's the swimming one. You've seen the bottom bouncing. Here's a different size. So there's a range of size. I have a 3/4, 1 ounce, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3.5 for the swimming, and the bouncing goes up to 4 ounce. So a good range, but really the difference in action is a big deal. And one thing I was just about to forget is also the deflection. And that's really another big deal, because very often bucktail will be used in place that you have, rocky places, even kelp and stuff like that. Well, you want to be able sometimes to bounce and to hit against or sideways with a rock or a dock pier, for example, and you want to limit the risk of snagging. Well, actually, the wings also a little bit, not much, but everything matters when it comes to allow you to fish in rocky places to lower the risk of snagging. So
you have you momentarily froze there for a second. So Patrick, I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Please.
I mean, I love the dart spin. Your magic swimmer, of course. I've never fished the bucktail a lot. I used the vertical, the bottom bouncer, because that thing just the erratic action on just that jigging is so fantastic. At least the jig head. Now, would you put a tail on that, like a curlyman tail, or are you going just bucktail?
Well, sometimes you just want to use the bucktail itself, especially when you want the maximum distance. Of course, you want to have the least drag possible. So sometimes the most important thing is to reach the fish. So if they are very far away, just adding the tail sometimes make you miss, lose 15, 20 feet. So just that piece of lead is better to long distance. But, a number of times you have tuna. Sometimes they're feeding on simply, anchovies. And even good fish, 100-pound, 150-pound fish, sometimes are feeding on small prey. So a small profile is plenty enough. But indeed, you're very right. Most of the time, I do use a trailer. The dart spin is my number one, the curly min, and also the sand eel, which is a needlefish paddle tail, all of them being made with the soft tough material. And there's a little hook here,
Oh, there is. Okay.
But I still put my lure and I put a drop of super glue. Okay. One thing I was about to forget to mention, actually, which is very interesting on the swimming one, that very likely is the only topwater bucktail. And again, that's thanks to the wings. That means when, you can fish, that guy, for example, is 2 ounce. So if you have a 30 or 40-pound braid, you can fish that at pretty much any level, and you can go if you want. And if you fish slow, you can use that guy, say, 50 feet deep. No problem. But if suddenly you have topwater action, well, you cast this guy, you watch the bait flying in the air, and when you see the bait, say, maybe 8 or 10 feet above the water, you engage the reel and you start to reel. So you can get that slack of line that's in the air, and when the lure hits the water and you keep the rod like 45 to 60 degrees, retrieve it fast enough, and you give twitch in the rod tip, actually, the swimming bucktail will flip on the top literally we'll have a skip. We'll skip on the top. So you literally can reproduce like a like a flying fish or a sardine when they skip on the top. You can do that with that bucktail. So making that probably the longest of all the top water in the world. Obviously, there's
right.
Not not anything else. So yeah, so having a trailer, I really love most of the time, probably 80% of the time, I will have a trailer. The dart spin is my go-to. It's a simple one. But if I need to fish very slow, when the bite is very sluggish, I really love the curly min. Putting a curly min bouncing. The curly min is so active and reactive to any kind of motion that you can, and it's buoyant, so you can let your bucktail land on the floor, and just the waves or the current will keep the tail above the bottom because it's buoyant and have a swim action. So you can leave it on the spot. And sometimes I'm hooking tarpons, I'm hooking snook, I'm hooking redfish, I'm hooking flukes, just leaving the bucktail on the bottom with a curly min on the back. And there's just enough action. You do nothing and suddenly, bam, you got the bite. I actually made a few tests, especially I fish a lot not a lot, but not as much as I want, but in Sebastian Inlet, where logically we should be going in a few weeks. And I tried a few times literally to leave the rod in a rod holder, doing absolutely nothing, just having a 3 or 4 ounce bucktail and the curly min on the tail, and I got bites. I hooked some fish, leaving it alone like if it was a bait fish.
Right. So, okay, so we only have a couple minutes here. We've actually run long, as we always do. But okay, let's pretend that I'm a total newbie fisherman, and you hand me a bucktail, flying bucktail, no trailer on it, nothing. How am I going to fish it? Am I just going to throw it out there and straight retrieve? Am I going to be
sometimes
jerking it? I mean, what's a good, where would I get started fishing a bucktail?
The typical, and it's hard to limit that to this, but yeah, typically bucktails, a lot of the action is basically let them dive at the right depth and have that steady retrieve. And that's why, for example, they're very good where you have ambush spots, when you have an estuary or something like that, for example, where typically predator will be concentrated, and you will be able to cover the bottom by multiple casts and pass in front of the fish. And in place like here, in the south of the US, we have a lot of shrimp. Texas, Louisiana, Florida, we have a lot of shrimp. So very often the shrimp just swim in the water, and the fish on the bottom doing pretty much nothing and just waiting to see something that drift in front of them and move in front of them, and then they swallow them. So that's basically why just casting and having just that simple steady retrieve, catch fish. Now, is it the most efficient? Well, I will say probably not overall, and that's why quite often on that steady retrieve, you will add here or there a little bit of rod shaking, and that's a very typical thing. So you turn the handle 3 to 5 times, and you shake the rod tip a few times with some level of with some level of energy, and that's one thing. Now, jigging them, you can jig like powerfully, like you will jig a metal jig, and simply cast, let dive, and make those long jerks, let them dive. Especially when you have those that are heavy enough, just the fall of them is, the fall will be fast enough that it drives a number of fish to bite. And when you have this kind of action, actually, honestly speaking, you can say probably 3 bites out of 5, if not 4 out of 5, happen on the fall. Another way, which is quite efficient on fast chasing predator like bonitas and stuff like that, is literally burning the bucktails. Now, big benefit of this guy, I mentioned that earlier on, that's truly a darting bait, thanks to the wings. So if you give an action like kind of what you will do with a walking the dog, the way you retrieve your rod and the kind of cadence you give to walking the dog, if you do that with the swimming bucktail, you will have that beautiful underwater darting where I will go one side. And it's not just straight going right or left. It actually dive a bit and goes up. And that's because the angle of the wings. So it's really going, I'm trying to show the best I can in front of the camera, but it goes here, and then it goes there, and then it goes here, and then it goes there. So on that and we all know walking the dog is a very good action that's typically linked to topwater bite, but actually even sinking lures like this can achieve that pretty well. So I guess that will be one of the bait we will give a try. But for years, I was like you. I was using very little bucktail. I didn't know how to use them properly, and I misregard them for a number of years, really many years, until the day someone opened my eyes. And then I was like, I cannot let it be like this. And I dig into that. And now I'm a huge believer in bucktail, to the point that the biggest harpoon I hooked in North America, I mean, I guess some of you know, I was used to guide for giant harpoon. I guided for all tackle world record harpoon of 286 pounds and 9 ounce. I actually hooked my largest harpoon in North America, which was a true 100 kilo fish, which, with actually this very lure and a dart spin 5.5.
Okay.
So this is the kind of thing that helps you to build a lot of confidence in the bait. And I think that's true with any lure. Any angler, when you have a bait that you don't really know, you don't really have the confidence, until the day you really start to catch fish with that bait, you may not grow the proper link to the bait to use it properly. And that's why you may leave the lures. And all of us, more or less, we have baits that we booked over the years. We try them a few times. We don't like them. We don't know really how to use them, and we let them go. I mean, look, one of the very best ever and best-selling topwater bait is the Super Spook. And just recently, I was reading, I don't know on what website was it Tackle Direct or Bass Pro, but I was just reading some people making some comments. And one guy wrote about the Super Spook. That thing is a crap. It has no action. Well, it's just the guy didn't know how to use a walking bait, So that's it. So I have that task to have you turning a big lover of bucktails.
That's well, you can school me on the bucktail again when I come and see you, Patrick. Of course, as always, we ran long. Anybody who is interested in getting the swimming bucktail, you have the discount code right here. It is good for 1 week. So if you're interested in that, definitely take advantage. Patrick is generous enough to come on here and teach us about his lures and give you a discount for the week. So Patrick, thank you so much. I need to get to this episode. I appreciate it. And I will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Excuse me. So always fun talking to Patrick. I always learn a ton. You know what? Before we get going on the episode, I showed you this stuff, but there was something I wrote down here. I don't know if you guys, if you're Raymarine users, every Thursday, pretty sure it was Thursday. Yeah, every Thursday they are doing instructional live videos like this one, probably done a little more professionally. Well, they definitely are. Jim McGowan, a good friend of mine with Raymarine, and he knows these products like the back of his hand. So if you want to learn a lot about your Raymarine fish finders, and I'm sure a lot of the information is fairly generic as far as it's going to guide you with any fish finder, but just so much. I've watched the last 3 weeks in a row, and I am learning so much from him. So if you want to learn more about your electronics, definitely you want to watch these. They are on the Raymarine Facebook page. And again, they do it going live every Thursday evening. I want to say it was like at 5 o'clock at night Pacific time. So anyway, with no further ado, we're going to bring up our episode. This was our trip to New Zealand in 2016. Fished with Brent Klink. I haven't watched the episode in a long, long time, so I don't remember exactly. But we definitely fished with Kerry Flowers, who was one of the best fishermen I've had a chance to fish with. The guy was just an animal. And then he would jump in the water and go free diving and get us lobster. I mean, the guy was just a waterman. I also fished with Jason Walker, another good friend from New Zealand. I love New Zealand. I've been there 4 times, I think now. And I mean, I would go back all the time if it was closer. It's a mission to get there for sure. The time differences are brutal. particularly coming back. I think when I came back from the last trip, I literally arrived like an hour after I had left. So it can get you, but a beautiful place, wonderful people, and the weather is very much like San Diego. The fish are very much like San Diego, except for the snapper, but the yellowtail, which I love catching yellowtail, but they just seem to get bigger, a little sharky, as you may have noticed from the screenshot I had up earlier with Kerry holding up what's left of a fish, but that's okay. There's good fishing. So with no further ado, let's bring this episode up. Oh, there's the picture right behind there. And let's get this episode rolling. This was, again, season 8, episode 1.
This week on Jackson Kayak's Kayak Fishing Show, we are in New Zealand. We're chasing after one of my favorite fish, yellowtail kingfish. We're hooking up with a local legend in Kerry Flowers.
Oh, yes, he's a good solid fish.
This guy has caught fish all over this island, and he promises to show us where the hot spots are. Stick around. It's going to be a great show.
Word to the wise, if your mama ain't taught you, don't stand in front of a man and a fish he ain't caught yet. Honey, if the world calls me, tell him I'm fishing. I'm going fishing. Where am I headed? Where am I headed? Where am I headed? Wouldn't you like to? Where am I headed? Where am I headed? Where am I headed? Wouldn't you like to go fishing? I'm going fishing. Woo!
This week on Jackson Kayak's Kayak Fishing Show with Jim Salmons, Jim heads to the North Island of New Zealand to fish with local legend Kerry Flowers for monster kingfish, otherwise known as yellowtail in North America. Joining him is local Jackson Kayak pro, Brent Klink.
So we're meeting up with Kerry Flowers, one of the local legends up here in Cooper's Beach, heading out to one of his spots that's quite a fair way out. And hopefully get some really big kingies and the kingfish put on a really good fight, and it's just they're a really good tasting eat.
We had a long talk last night, and he's got this place pretty wired. He knows the spot, so I plan on listening intently to at least the locations, and then I'll try some of my stuff, see if it works. If not, I will go over to the old mechanical jigs. But I want to try one of my jigs first, just to see how it does.
So I'm Kerry Flowers. I'm a kayak fisherman in New Zealand, in the far north of New Zealand, on the east coast. This behind me is Doubtless Bay. This is where I mainly fish, but I live only 3/4 of an hour away from here, well, from my favorite launch site. So it's just so easy for me. It's the closest, easiest place where I can get into good fish.
Kerry Flowers is, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of a local kayak fishing legend here in New Zealand. He is the first person to catch a paddle out marlin from a kayak in New Zealand. So very well respected. Because he's a paddler that is willing to put in miles to go out there and find the spots. And he definitely knows the spots. I mean, where he took us, he had that area very dialed in. I mean, he showed me a shot of his GPS, and he has all these different spots marked in that he worked long and hard and put in a lot of paddling miles to find. He paddles hard and he fishes hard. The guy just, I mean, he was a machine when it came to mechanical jigging. Which is that, that really erratic motion. And he just did it. And you watched him paddle, the guy is a very, very good paddler. He made that kraken fly across the water.
The weather's always quite warm up here. The water is definitely a lot warmer than further down a bit south. We have some really good kingies or yellowtails. and some really big snapper up this way.
Kerry got on a nice one on the mechanical jigging, man. Came out to a high spot. Didn't see a lot on the meters, but a little scratch here and there. And this looks like a really good fish.
It's not that big, but
I take that all day long, brother. Beautiful yellowtail kingfish. Woo. Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
The day has only just begun and the hits keep on coming. When we return, Jim and the guys see how many fish they can catch before their arms just give out.
And they did start to give out. I mean, we caught a lot of fish. It's absolutely an amazing fishery there in New Zealand. And again, Kerry Flowers had these spots so
Welcome
dialed
back to
in.
Jackson Kayak's Kayak Fishing Show. Jim, Kerry, and Brent are already on the water and smashing fish. And the day has only just begun.
Remember that sore elbow I had? It's back. Oh, isn't that cute? What's that going to be when it grows up? Nice, man. Good job, Brent.
This is Brent's little skipjack tuna. He's just pulled up on a jig. It's quite a good effort for a jig. They don't often catch these on a jig, so that's pretty cool. And I just got totally railed by a very large kingfish, which took me into the reef and broke my leader off. So now I need to tie a new jig on and try again. Okay, so now we're going to rig up for another jig because the last kingfish that reefed me took my jig. So I've got one here that's already rigged with a hook on it and has been quite successful for me in the past. So I think we will just tie that one straight on and get back into it.
Well, I've always said, you know, when you're going to a new location, one of the smartest things you can do is to hire a local guide. You know, those guys are on the water all the time. If you don't have that ability, at least hook up with a guy who fishes an area regularly and knows how to fish that area. So being able to tap into a resource like Kerry, who does have an area so wired, just makes all the difference in whether you are going to a spot and catching a fish or spending half your day trying to find a spot. And not only that, just knowing the techniques and what you should be doing at a particular location. So it's always a good idea to hook up with a local and get their information, pick their brains as much as you can. And you got a guy like Kerry who is so willing to share that information with us. It just made for what could only be called just a spectacular trip. I mean, we could not have had the success we had without being out there with Kerry.
Woo-hoo! Triple hookup, beautiful fish. Look at that. So strong, so much fun. Woo-hoo! Boom! Yeah!
And that's a little one
so nice
over
to have
there.
that fish finder hold you over the spot, built-in GPS. So we marked the spot that Kerry told us about, and able to stay over the top of that. You see a school of bait or a school of fish down below, you drop on it and bam, you're on.
Because this last fish had me in the reef, I want to check my leader and I want to make sure that it's not too rubbed. And I can actually feel some abrasions on this here, so I'm going to cut it back. I'm going to feel it until I can't feel any abrasions. I've got about a 5 meter leader on this reel, so I can come back a bit until I can't feel any more abrasions, and then I'll cut it and I'll tie it there. Any little nick or abrasion in the leader will significantly weaken the leader.
I was jigging, similar to what Kerry was doing. I didn't have any lures or anything like that, like what Jim has, where he was just doing the yo-yo jigging, I think he'd call it. So when I caught my first kingfish off a kayak, it was actually quite exhilarating. Something so small, a small boat, for an example, and you're pulling up a 15 kilo, 32 pound kingy that tows you around. and screens out line at the same time. You know, it's very, very exhilarating.
I think one of the cool things about New Zealand, and maybe it's just because of the proximity to the water, there's water everywhere. Seems like everybody here has kayaks, everybody here has boats, and everybody here fishes.
This feels like a small one.
It didn't matter if we were walking into a grocery store, a clerk would ask us about fishing. You know, if they knew we were fishing, there were comments about fishing. Everybody here fishes. There's a very passionate community of kayak fishermen here. We saw that when we came here our first time, 6-8 years ago. And that just has grown and grown. There are communities of kayak fishermen all over New Zealand. And the thing is, there's not really that many people in New Zealand, but there's these big communities of kayak fishermen. So they have competitions on a regular basis. There is banter between the different clubs. It's a passionate group, and it's just really fun to be a part of.
I'm here, dude. Boy, you know what? This fish is not as big as I thought he was. He sure fought a lot harder than he is big.
When we come back, the guys are joined by old friend Jason Walker as he tries to catch his first kingfish from a kayak.
Yeah, vertical jigging is a lot of work, but it's so exciting. There's nothing like it. The hit that you get from that when you're fishing that way, because you're working that jig and all of a sudden it's just like bam, and you just get bent over.
And a bronze whale, a shark wants to have a free feed.
And a few sharks.
There's not much you can do about it because they just come in and they smack you. They're known as the tax men for a reason, and he's taken the best part of that fish.
So once I was jigging for some kingfish, we're sitting about 65-70 meters of water. I think I was on my 4th or 5th kingfish, and I felt the line slowly tugging, and I knew that something wasn't right here. The shark grabbed it, swam behind me, started towing me backwards into Jim's line. So we got our lines tangled there, and it started swimming away, taking quite a bit of line. I was actually, to be honest, I was kind of a bit scared. So the lessons that I learned from once the shark started coming up, it done a straight dive. My rod was hanging over the edge of the kayak. Once it done the straight dive, I should have pulled my rod around and dipped the rod into the actual water beside the kayak. But just a learning experience. As the shark dove, it snapped the rod on the edge of the kayak, and all part of the learning experience. Just got busted off by looked like a big bronzy, so definitely wasn't a mako. Oh, new rod, hopefully a new reel. Oh dear, oh dear. First shark on the kayak.
All right, well, last time we were in New Zealand, sharks were a big issue. Lost a lot of fish to the shark, so brought my shark shield and have it ready. Hook a fish, just turn it on. Let me land my fish. Just gonna strap it right onto here, hanging off the side, hook a fish, turn it on. Boom, that's all there is to it. I got peace of mind. Sharks are not gonna get my fish. Nice one.
You almost sent that rod off the boat.
Kingfish, thanks, Kerry. My first legal kingfish off a kayak. Nearly 10 years kayak fishing, never done it. Done it today.
So we are vertical jigging out here. So you want to have a shorter rod with a soft tip. This thing's 6 feet. Nice soft tip so you can get that good action while you're jigging. The reel I'm using is a Truth large game narrow. It's very comfortable in your hand, and when you're doing a lot of that retrieving, it's easy to get your line level wind. The reel is filled with Seagar.
Of course, that's a Siegler reel.
Hollow core braid. On top of that,
No
we're
longer
using
Truth reels.
80-pound Seagar fluorocarbon leader. And heavier, because these fish are big and they're right down in the rocks. You need that heavy line so you can fish basically a locked drag, so you can keep those fish out of the rocks. That's what you're using on the trip this week.
I'm gonna go for a bit of a swim, see if I can find us some dinner, crayfish or two, hopefully. It's a bit dirty, so it's going to be a little bit hard, but I've got pretty good knowledge in this area, so once I find a landmark, I should be able to find the holes. Well, that time, pretty much everyone's arms were knackered. We were pretty sore. We'd been at it for quite a while. So we headed off in. I had a quick little dive on the coast for the guys and managed to score a couple of crayfish for tea. And then we headed back in and we made a plan for day 2. So we're gonna clean up this shark bitten fish and extract what meat we can off it. There's no point in wasting it. So I'm just gonna cut it off here. I'm not sure. I've heard there is an issue with bacteria around the bite. I've done this plenty of times, and I've even eaten it raw after a shark's had it and not had an issue. So I don't know. Possibly if you're in the tropics, it's worse. But I just tend to just trim away the rough bits and then extract what meat I can from the carcass.
The first day comes to a close, and the guys finally get a chance to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They have one more day ahead to hit the pins and see if they can crack their personal best.
I think I'll catch another one.
So, yeah, I miss traveling. I miss going there. There's still a little bit of this episode going. There was a comment. Oh, Michael, can I explain how the shark shield works, please? Yeah. I'll be the first to admit, I was super skeptical on shark shields when I first heard of them, when I first saw them. But then getting one in my hand and fishing in some fairly sharky areas and actually seeing a shark shield work, seeing it deter fish firsthand. And then since then, I've seen videos of it actually deterring, the big sharks, the great whites, and in a full charge, having it turn a great white shark away. So I am a believer. Excuse me. The way that a shark shield works is it sends out an electrical pulse into the water. So literally, if I have that thing in the water off the side of the kayak and I put my leg accidentally up against it, I will get a little bit of a shock. So it's sending that pulse out into the water. Sharks don't like that. They have receptors in their snout to sense fish movements, and called their ampullae of Lorenzini. And this pulsing in their face is getting shocked, and they don't like it. So I don't remember exactly what the radius is of how big that pulse is. The main thing is, I mean, if you're down deep and excuse me, and you hook into a fish and the shark decides to take it, that's probably gone. But the key for me was always the safety aspect of not losing a fish right next to the side of the kayak. Or, you guys have seen me, I'm always putting my legs in the water. And just when you're dealing with the fish right next to the side of the boat, I don't need a shark coming up right up on the side of the boat and taking a fish or potentially hitting my leg or something else. So that's why I use the shark shield. If I would catch a fish, I would then turn the shark shield on. So I didn't leave the shark shield on all the time. Now, if I fished in an area that was, known for white sharks, super sharky, then yeah, I would leave it on all the time. But for me, it was more of a thing to keep them away when I was bringing the fish up next to the kayak. So for that, the shark shield works really, really well. And like I said, I wasn't a believer initially, but I have seen it firsthand drive off sharks. I had a tiger shark come up right up on me, and I turned on my shark shield and it bolted away. Hammerheads here in La Jolla, we had a couple years ago, we had just tons of hammerheads out there for some reason. I mean, it's not a normal thing. I mean, we have hammerheads, but not in the numbers that we were seeing them. And it was a problem. You're bringing up a fish up to the boat and a hammerhead would come in and grab it. So I would see it drive those hammerheads away regularly. So I'm a big believer in the shark shield. It definitely works. Douglas, how are you? Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you guys joining us. A reminder that we did have that discount code for Patrick Sebile's Band of Anglers Lures. I will pop that up again at the end of the show. But until then, let's run the rest of this episode. Come on.
Welcome back. This week, Jackson Kayak's kayak fishing show is in New Zealand, hunting the North Island for hard-fighting kingfish. It's day 2, and the guys have already been beat up by furious fights on big fish. They have one more day to fish with Kerry, and they get up early to take full advantage of the calm water. So far, the guys have had it easy with the fish in almost every drop, and today is looking to be exceptional.
I don't do much in the way of mechanical jigging. I don't do a whole lot of yo-yoing either. At least it's been a while, and physically it takes a lot out of you, because it's either doing this erratic motion and very quickly, or the straight grind, and just winding as fast as you can all day just gets exhausting. But with that said, it's probably one of the most exciting, most vicious hits you will ever get while fishing is on a straight, fast grind, because you're winding as fast as you can. I mean, you cannot wind faster than these fish can swim. And I mean, if you just picture that, winding as fast as you can, and all of a sudden your lure just stops and starts ripping the other direction. And we're fishing heavy line, very tight drags to keep the fish out of the rocks, and all of a sudden your rod is just like pinned down on your side, pinned to the side of the kayak, and you're just like, it's like, oh my god! There was a lot of grunting and groaning going out there, going, oh!
We came to a new spot, 2 drops, 2 fish. I'm on my 3rd fish. This feels like a decent one. I tell you, it is so nice and so important really to have that fish finder and GPS, because I keep you were drifting quite a bit, so use the GPS to get back to the spot, and the fish finder to let you know exactly where on the spot when you want to drop. Oh yeah, nice fish. Very nice fish. This is my biggest on the trip so far. He inhaled that freaking jig. Oh, it carries on with a smoker. Oh. This has got him going in reverse now. There he goes running. So I've finally got my fish up off the bottom, and we're sitting right on top of a school of fish now, and the marks here are just fantastic. They're just absolutely amazing. I've got a pretty reasonable fish on, and he's still running. I've had him on for about probably nearly 5 minutes now, and he's still got plenty to go. Oh, and he's just a dogged fish. He just does not want to come up. Big, strong, powerful kingfish. We've got a bit of current here, so he's using the current to his advantage. Good airflow flowing, or good current flow flowing past his gills, so he's not getting tired quickly. But I'm sure I'm going to win this one. He's a good, solid fish. Oh, yes, he's a good, solid fish. Oh. Well, mate, they're fantastic to eat. Heck yeah, they're absolutely fantastic to eat. Oh, wow, what a fish. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, I want to go back.
We have had an incredible few days here fishing with Kerry Flowers, Brent Klink. Man, what a good time. And we still got days to go. Join us next week for more exciting action from us here in New Zealand.
Close that. Yeah, it was an absolutely amazing trip. And like I said, can thank Kerry Flowers enough for putting us in the right areas. That day that ended that, this pinnacle, we literally, you just stay on your fish finder, watch the fish finder, and use that GPS, mark the spot initially, and then you would just start paddling back to your spot, and then you just see the fish finder just light up. That was using the Raymarine Dragonfly back then, and it would just light up with fish on this pinnacle. And you have to fish a super, super tight drag, because if you don't, these fish will rock you. I mean, yellowtail are super, super strong, and they will put you in the rocks. So, oh, and my wife says, look how good my goatee looked. I think it looks pretty good now, babe. So yeah, amazing place. I want to go back to New Zealand. Oh my gosh, I've been so tired of not being able to go places. So anyway, I appreciate everybody who joined us here today. Remember, here is that discount code for a band of anglers on the swimming bucktails, and that is good for the entire week. And please take advantage of that. You know, Patrick comes on here every week and shares his information about his lures. So buy a couple. We will be back next Tuesday with part 2 of this episode. I believe we're doing more snapper fishing in part 2. Depending on my schedule, I'll may or may not be here Thursdays. Thursdays are not been happening a lot lately, but you never know. Anyway, I do appreciate again you guys all joining us. Please share this with your friends. If you would want to be notified of our episodes, make sure you go to kayakfishingtales.com. That is our YouTube channel, and subscribe. If you subscribe over there, you're more likely to be notified of when we're coming on live, as opposed to Facebook, which doesn't always send out everything to everyone. So anyway, I do appreciate you all coming on here. If you are going out on the water, please remember, always wear your PFD and keep your paddle right side up. Y'all take care.